What's going on, everybody? Welcome to Mosh Brodes, a brand new presentation. We're going to talk a lot of Philadelphia sports. I'm Geoff Mosher. That other guy right there with the hat on backwards, you know him, Hunter Brody. And look, this might be the first of several Mosh Brodes to come. So I hope everybody enjoys the show. We got a lot to get into. Eagles with a big game this weekend against the New York Giants. Now, Doug Pederson had a press conference, and boy, did he have some interesting things to say. I thought the most interesting thing at first was the fact that he kind of admit the Giants nearly pulled that game off, which is obvious, almost handled them is how he said it. But then the discussion about the whole Brett Favre, Carson Wentz take came up, and I was surprised that this became a thing, but as the press conference went on, it clearly became a thing. So, Hunter, just for those who may not have seen it, right? One time he was asked about Brett Favre's recent comment that the Eagles should have kept Nick Foles over Carson Wentz. And he kind of gave the, they're friends, right? Doug Pederson and Brett Favre are friends. They played together in Green Bay. And he gave the old, I respect his opinion kind of take. Then the second time he was asked about it, and he was asked to clarify, you just respect his opinion? Do you actually disagree with what Brett said? And he said, hey, look, I just respect the guy's opinion. What can I say? I'll talk to him about it some other time. Not until he was asked the third time, Hunter, did Doug Pederson say, oh, by the way, Carson's my guy. All right, Carson's my guy. He's the guy we went forward with. I know Doug doesn't win the press conference, but this one was mind-boggling to me. And I'm not normally a you-know-what-stir, but I'm sure you had to be thinking the same thing.
Oh, no doubt about it. And you're right. He doesn't win the press conference. I couldn't tell you the last time he won a press conference. I was surprised the Sixers won one. That was shocking. Well, I hear the Mets owner coming in, and everyone's all pumped up that he's going to make some moves there. Press conferences here normally don't go a good way at all. That's why I'm saying when the Sixers did it, I was almost blown away. But with Doug Pederson today, that was so interesting. It felt forced. It was almost as if he really needed to make sure, hey, Carson's our guy, in case anyone's wondering. He is our guy. It's not adding up. All the messages that are being thrown towards Carson Wentz, and I feel people take that as an excuse. This fan base is clearly split. You have the Wentz haters, the Wentz supporters, and it just feels if you make a statement like there's mixed messages, or it seems weird that the front office members and the head coach isn't supporting Carson Wentz, that automatically means you're making an excuse for Carson. Mm-hmm. And that's not the case. I mean, you go out and you draft a quarterback in the second round. All of this matters and adds context to why you're getting the results that you are getting. It doesn't feel like this organization looks at Carson Wentz and says, this is it. This is really it. When they say comments like we heard today, it feels fake to me.
Well, that's what I can't figure out. I can't decide if this is finally an example of maybe Doug holding Carson's feet to the fire a little bit, holding him accountable, or if it's just another example of Doug Pederson not winning the press conference and saying something that in his mind must sound different than the way people interpret it. I mean, I've been to 1,000 press conferences as a reporter, and normally when you get an uncomfortable question like that asks you whether or not you agree with a sentiment that goes against your guy, what you say is, if you know this person the way Doug knows Brett Favre and they are friends and former teammates, how hard would it have been for Doug to simply say, look, I love Brett, I respect his opinion, but I disagree with it. Carson's our guy. And the first time he simply just left it as, hey, I respect Brett Favre's opinion. And that sounded the first alarm. Like, well, wait a minute. If you respect someone's opinion and you don't disagree with it, then, or outwardly say you disagree with it, then you kind of leave it open in the air. And you should know that as the head coach of a major market football team. But the second time, and it was Les Bowen, and Les was almost incredulous the way he asked the question. He said, Doug, just to clarify, you said you respect Brett Favre's opinion, but clearly you disagree with it, I would assume, Les Bowen says. And Doug kind of doubles down and says, hey, look, I'm just telling you, I respect Brett Favre's opinion. And he's still never – that. Chance number two, he could have again said, I respect his opinion. However, Carson is my guy. And that's where – I wonder, everybody likes to look at Doug as the, oh gosh, gee golly, kind of foolish guy who loses the press conference. But I couldn't personally help but wonder if there was some behind the scenes messaging going on here.
I wouldn't be surprised either. And I just feel that we are sitting here today, and I can't help but laugh inside because this conversation will never go away. It will never go away, no matter how bad Nick Foles plays. Because let's be realistic, Nick Foles has sucked this year. The Bears' offense looks so miserable. Yet it doesn't matter. That doesn't matter when this conversation keeps coming up. It's almost as if Nick Foles is the version of the Super Bowl game all the time, every single time that this conversation comes up. Why is that the case? And when you think about where this outlet was, it was on First Take with Max Kellerman and Stephen A. Smith, and everyone knows what Max's feelings are, or feelings with air quotes. He just says a lot of stuff because that's what the show is all about. How much of this is let's spark the Philadelphia conversation, and how much of it is he really feels that way?
Mm-hmm. No, I think that's a great point. But it's obviously different, though, when you're Max Kellerman, whose job it is to kind of maybe look at things, quote, down the middle or analytically, and maybe even stir the pot a little bit like a coward likes to do. And when you're Doug Pederson and your quarterback has come under fire all year long, and so have you, for that matter, meaning you, Doug Pederson. And then there's just a roboticness, right, that you see with coaches and executives around the league, that when they get asked tough questions about star players, that they know how to navigate them. They know what to say to keep the reporters at bay and be very, very unequivocal about how they feel. And for Doug to have to take 3 different chances to be unequivocal and then finally say, hey, don't put words in my mouth here. Carson's my guy. We drafted him. We moved on with him. Just had a very strange feel about it. But it does bring up another topic that you and I have discussed in the past, and we don't necessarily see the eye to eye on it, on when you look at the first 8 games and the failures of the Eagles offense. And what an amazing stat. Do you know the Eagles have scored more points in their losses than they have in their wins?
Wow.
I mean, is that not unbelievable?
Yeah, it really is.
It's crazy. I have felt that when you cut up the piece of the pie, right? Because there's more than one person responsible. When you cut up the piece of the pie of accountability or blame, the largest piece, in my opinion, has to go to Carson, because I feel like many of his turnovers have been inexcusable and certainly not something that are coached, and also not something that are the byproduct of a bad play call. But you have said consistently, and maybe after this press conference, I have to just surrender to you, that you think Doug has been more of the issue this year than Carson.
Yeah, I do. I feel the problem is, I feel every time I try and, I like to look at every avenue. So when I say something like that, it's like, all right, Brodes, you got to look at the other side, look at everything. Because you fought back at me. I said this on 97.3. I'm like, Doug has been worse. And you were like, Brodes, hold on a second, when you were on Football at 4 with the Inside the Birds podcast crew that we love every single day, by the way. I had to dive deeper. I went back. I rewatched the games during the bye week. I put myself through hell. It's like, all right, I'm going to sit down. I'm going to rewatch everything. It was a miserable idea, but I did it.
Wait, you watched all 8 games during the bye week?
The last 2. I watched the last 2 games all over. I did not watch all 8. I'm not that much of a psychopath. And there's just so much that, I get it. It's almost like what comes first, the chicken or the egg. These two are always combined, and that's every head coach for the most part, offensive head coach with their quarterback. How are they like together when it comes to game day stuff? And there's so many times where I just feel like he's put in such a horrendous decision, but that doesn't take away from Carson Wentz being bad as well. That's the thing. It's almost like what I was saying before, where if you say one thing that somewhat defends Carson Wentz and why he's put in that position, it's, oh, well, you're making all these excuses. No, because I can go to that play where he rolled to the left and he didn't throw the ball away. He took the hit. I mean, that's not Doug Pederson's fault. That is just a really bad decision. Or when he's throwing the ball to Hightower in 70-mile-per-hour winds for no reason against the Dallas Cowboys. There's no reason to do that. That defense stinks. You should be able to move the football in another way. So there's plenty of times where, yeah, Carson Wentz has just been bad because Carson Wentz has just been bad. But there's also, it starts, whether it's right or wrong, it starts with the head coach. And I'm the same way when it comes to basketball, even though I'm a little bit different. At some point, while I put the blame on the players more, if there is this culture going on where it's consistently happening, I will look at Brett Brown, even though it's not like him on the court playing the game. That's just how sports goes. Right or wrong, it will eventually fall on the head coach. So when I see these play calls, yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, I was going to say, it sounds like what you're saying then is when you blame Doug Pederson more for the problems than Carson, you're not blaming specifically play calling or play design. You're blaming the idea that you are the owner of this program. You are the head coach. Everything that happens underneath you is either directly or indirectly under your jurisdiction, so traceable to you. And I think that's fair. That's absolutely fair. But I also think that that's kind of the low hanging fruit a little bit. Like, this thing has gone to crap, and so it's got to be Doug because he's the head coach. I feel like when you look at Carson's turnovers specifically, all right, in most NFL games, 1 or 2 turnovers is going to decide the outcome. Most games in the NFL are one possession games that are, where the turnover battle, whoever wins the turnover battle wins the game. And if Carson just executes simple fundamentals that the coaches would like him and coach him to do properly, some of those losses, specifically Washington, you're up 17-0. You threw 2 really bad interceptions that had nothing to do with pressure or play design, just 2 bad interceptions, right? That's a game. You go to, the Rams game, they got soundly beaten. We can put that on Doug if you want.
Actually,
I have
Jim
no
Schwartz probably.
Or even Jim, right? I mean, that's another big piece of the pie that we haven't gotten to yet. But I guess what I'm saying is, in a lot of these games that they've lost because of the turnovers here and there, whether it's Pittsburgh or Baltimore, some of those turnovers, you'd be like, that's not on the coach. And if they actually could have won those games because they played a little smarter, I think it makes Doug look better overall, and that he did have control over these situations. And it's easier to say, you know what, Doug, I also have this other theory, and hear me out on this. Carson plays the game. When you're a fan, you root for the player more than the coach, right? You put the jersey on. You don't buy a Doug Pederson jersey. So I always feel like there's an emotional attachment to want to give the player a little bit of a break because he's out there putting it all on the line. Coach is standing on the sidelines, and then go after the coach a little more. Am I fair in maybe thinking that it's just naturally easier to criticize a coach than a player who you kind of are more invested in?
No, that's definitely very fair. Like, I think if you look through some of these games, you mentioned Washington. That game I put more on Carson than I do Doug Pederson, the interceptions, and then, giving Washington such a short field, and they were continuously putting up points because of that. So there were games where it was, wow, that was fully on Carson. But then there's games where it's not like individual play calls that ruin the game, but I just don't feel that Doug Pederson, when it comes to an offensive game plan, has any flow. When you watch these games from McVay, Shanahan, you can see that, wow, that play call in the first quarter set up that play call in the second quarter. And the actual formations, they make sense. There's a path where, okay, because he calls this ends up happening later on, and that play action worked. You got that 50-yard play because of what you did earlier. With Doug P., it's almost as if I feel he closes his eyes and he goes, this play, that play, that play. Like, there's no flow in the offense. And I feel that does play a role in what they're doing. The scripted plays, this is the thing for me. The scripted plays are beautiful. The scripted plays work. Moving downfield, you go down, you score a touchdown. Then he's off script, and it looks horrendous. So is there a way that you can have 10 different set of scripted plays and just go in with that? Because that shows me he can do it, and then when he has to go on his toes and think on his feet, that's when he has the issue. And I do think that does play a role in Carson, because when you have a flow with your play calling, well, you kind of have a set of ideas of what you're going to do with each play.
Are you drawing a line from one to another? Because, like I said, I think Doug is high on the totem pole of things that have gone wrong. And you just mentioned a lot of reasons why you would say Doug Pederson is responsible for this mess. But if you firmly believe, like I do, that turnovers are game-killing follies, right? For me to get on board with what you're saying as Doug over Carson, number one, I would have to draw a line and say this lack of flow in the offense, this kind of hapless play calling from after the first 15 plays is directly traceable to why Carson Wentz throws the ball up in the air to John Hightower and it comes in somebody else's hands. I'm not there. I can't. I can definitely get on board with the idea that if you have a lackluster offense, that the quarterback then feels like he needs to be a hero and makes plays he shouldn't make. But I don't know that that's going on, because this has been going on with Carson for quite a while. And the offense at times over the last 3 years has looked really good at times. It's looked bad too with the injuries, especially going back last year. But I don't think Doug's calling that radically different or radically worse of an offense now than he was 2 or 3 years ago. I think the radical difference, and if you look at the career trajectory for Carson, is that while he's always been kind of a guy who doesn't want to do the check down and look to push the ball down the field, he's never been this reckless before. Fumbling, yes. Interceptions, no. This year, he is reckless on both accounts, fumbles and interceptions, and the man is now doubling down on it in his press conferences, really not articulating the accountability, saying this will end. It's like Doug's press conference. It's so easy to be like, you know what? I'm really hurting this team in critical moments. It needs to stop. I want to be aggressive, but I have to be smart. Even if he didn't believe it, it would be nice for him to just say it. But him not saying it leads you to believe that what's going on behind closed doors is Carson's looking at this tape thinking, you know what? That throw wasn't so bad if I just put it here. Next time I'm going to make sure I put it there. Next time I'm going to make sure I do this. Next time when I roll out of that pocket and 5 guys converge on me like Dallas, I'm going to try to tuck the ball and run instead of just sitting there and letting them whack me. It just leaves all these questions about what's going on in this man's head. Hunter, I mean, the fumble against Dallas has got to be the tipping point for most people, where you just say, I can't believe it. You got out of the pocket and stood there for 5 seconds and took a hit. Your only target was a tight end who I think was in line at the time, so I don't even know if he was an eligible receiver or not. But nonetheless, that kind of mistake to me means there's things going on upstairs that even Doug can't get through.
That's true. That's true. And I do always bring this up when it comes to, the coaching thing, because we always have this conversation about Press Taylor, Doug Pederson, and DeFilippo. How is he being coached? It's hard for me to imagine that they haven't tried to drill this into the kid's head, right? So it's like the Ben Simmons thing. People who hated Brett Brown to this insane degree came up with this philosophy and idea that Brett Brown never told Ben Simmons to shoot. Well, come on. I mean, that's a joke. Everyone who has ever played with Ben Simmons or watched him or coached him have said, you know what would be a good idea? If you shot the basketball, right? Everyone has told him that. So I feel the same way with this. While they might not be as hard on him as DeFilippo was, they have been informing him to, hey, you got to check it down. You got to throw it away. You need to do things. So you're right. I mean, that's where I want to make it clear that I'm not saying that Carson Wentz isn't doing some horrendous stuff on his own outside of Doug Pederson, because he is.
Let me put you on the spot.
Yeah, Go ahead.
If things continue to go south, right, and the Eagles finish with a terrible record and don't even win this abysmal NFC least division, right? Let's safely assume that's because Carson did not play very well. Right, they're not going to lose all these games like 38-41. If things go really poorly for the rest of the way, it's probably because Carson didn't play well, and probably because Doug was unable to fix the mess of the offense. So, if a change would be made, would you rather see a new coach or a new quarterback?
New coach. And that's
really?
Not because I don't think Doug Pederson is a bad coach. I'm frustrated with Doug Pederson. I don't think he's a bad coach. See, there's this overreaction of the right now. People want Howie gone, Schwartz gone. It's funny. Schwartz, I'm a Schwartz guy. I think his system has flaws, but if you look at his 20-year career, there is a lot of success. The front four gets home. I think it's crazy that everybody knows what he does. He doesn't make adjustments, and he's still this successful. I think that tells me something, but it's all about the moment. So Jim Schwartz has a bad game against the Rams. Everyone wants him canned. I haven't heard a peep about Jim Schwartz getting canned since that moment. It's about the right now and what's happening. So while I'm very frustrated with Doug, I'm not screaming that he deserves to get fired because it's looking ugly right now. They got to work themselves out of this jam. But when it comes to Carson Wentz, it's more, to summarize what I'm trying to say here, it's more about how I feel Carson Wentz can be at his ceiling than I am saying Doug Pederson is a bad coach. I think that what is inside of Carson Wentz is special, but he's got to do a better job himself and help around him to get it out of him. I can't pass up on that. And I hate to keep bringing up Sixers and all, but Ben Simmons, to me, whether he figures it out or not, I am going down with the ship because the ceiling's too high. With Wentz, it's too early for me to make a decision on getting away from him based off of what I have seen when he does play his best football. So if it doesn't work, I'll sink with it, but I got to stick with Wentz.
All right. I will have to see how this season goes. I'm to me, man, like you've got more than a year now. I mean, last year Carson had his struggles.
For the first time ever with Wentz in that Cowboys game, I did think to myself, does he deserve to sit for a series? And I know that they're not just going to bench Carson Wentz. Like, I get it. But from my standpoint, as I was sitting on the couch, that was the first moment where I thought, would it be a horrendous idea to sit him down for a series or two? And by the way, the next series after I stated that to myself, they went down and scored a touchdown. So if I was the head coach, I probably would have made a poor decision in that scenario.
That was the football gods just smacking you right across the face for being an idiot right there.
Absolutely.
All right, let's talk about someone who's probably almost definitely not going to be on the team next year, but is sort of factoring into the discussion, and that's Alshon Jeffery. The team has really confused its paying customers this year. I mean, they kept him on the 53-man roster coming out of camp, thought that there was a shot he'd be able to play in the first 6 weeks. That's why they didn't put him on the PUP or whatever list that he would have had to go on. He didn't play. He still hasn't played. We're now on week 11 here. And it remains to be seen whether Alshon Jeffery is going to take the field even this week for the Philadelphia Eagles. My feeling is this. The Eagles have their ex-receiver now for the long term. His name is Travis Fulgham. I believe he's legit. There's no reason not to think. He checks off every boxes. He contested catches, athleticism, quickness for his size, route running. He is what they needed out of an ex-receiver. He might be even what Alshon Jeffery used to be at Alshon Jeffery's finest, except with even quicker. I don't understand the point now of putting Alshon Jeffery back on the field. And I'll tell you why. They're clearly going to try to get rid of him in the offseason. If they can't trade him, they'll probably release him. And because they don't owe him any guaranteed money next year. But he's still on the books for non-guaranteed money. So what if he were to go out there and play, break his foot, break something, get hurt again, to the point where now you can't cut him without paying him an injury settlement next year? I would just say, I'm not going to play him because I'm not taking that risk. I need to be able to move on from him in the offseason. And really, frankly, right now, other than 8 to 10 snaps or maybe in the red zone, I don't know what benefit that he would bring. And even if he does bring a little bit of reward, it's not worth the risk. There's no reason to play Alshon Jeffery for the rest of the year.
That's a great point. I was thinking before we get to the on-the-field stuff, how much of not putting him on the PUP list to start the season was about maybe feeling or believing that they could find a way to trade him before that week 6 even came up?
I assume, there are reports out there that it was on the trading block. It's kind of hard to trade a guy when he hasn't played and he's coming off a major surgery. You would have thought that that's why they kept him. Maybe they were trying to showcase him a little bit. But you also have to wonder, he had this surgery. That was a foot issue. Then the foot issue went away. Then he got sick. Then after he recovered from being sick, it was back to the foot, and now it's the calf, right? I also wonder, from Alshon's perspective, if I know I'm getting cut in the offseason and I'm going to need a job, the last thing I want to do is go out there and get hurt and jeopardize my standing in free agency, especially in a year where free agency might not be as giving because of the salary cap potentially going down. So all he has right now to stand on as a free agent is his history. And while that history is filled with overcoming injuries, there's also been very good years. And even his last game with the Miami game last year, I think he had 100 yards. So, I mean, there are teams that are going to look at Alshon Jeffery and say, this guy can still be a productive enough receiver. He's worth X dollars. But if he goes out there this year, gets hurt again, doesn't play well, only plays 8 snaps a game, I don't see what kind of value that is for Jeffery to go into the offseason.
I knew something was up, though, when he came back from the Liz Frank injury, and randomly, this was when the speculation was he's going to play this upcoming week. I think it was around week 5 or so in that area, week 4, week 5. There was speculation he might come back. And then on Thursday's injury report, randomly, it went from foot to illness. And I'm thinking to myself, it wasn't COVID related, so we knew that. You're telling me this guy battles back from this Liz Frank injury, and then the sniffles is going to hold him out of a game, or a cough or anything like that was going to be the reason why, and then he didn't end up playing that week. And then randomly the calf came up, and then it was calf and illness. Like, something was just not adding up to the point where you had to question what is going on. Does he even want to play? Maybe he's the one that doesn't want to play for the free agents. Like you said, maybe he doesn't want to. But we do know that sometimes guys get a little bit more leash when it comes to playing, whether it's J.J. Arcega-Whiteside, because he's a second-round pick, he might get play over somebody else. Do you think that maybe, and it's hard to take away the production of Fulgham, but because of the contract, could you see a situation where the Eagles are like, we paid this guy, this looks bad, we got to put him out there more than we probably should so it doesn't look as horrible on our part?
Yeah, I suppose so. But again, I look at it, what would I rather do? Look bad in the public or look even worse if this guy suffers an injury and he's got to be on my team next year rehabbing, making money when they had the opportunity to just cut bait with him while he was healthy?
Well, that's the logical way to look. I don't know if they always do that. I would like to think that.
Well, I mean, I'll say this for Howie. While I do think Howie Roseman is concerned and Jeffrey Lurie are concerned about public relations, they're also concerned about where their money is going. And they've made unpopular moves before to either recoup money or make sure they don't have to spend more money. I mean, it happens all the time. So, I look, this Sunday to me is very curious. If he does not play against the Giants, right, then I think something's going to be up. And that would make me think that he's probably not going to play all year long. The excuses are gone now. You had the bye. You come back from it. The calf should be okay. I mean, if it was that bad of a calf injury that they thought he was going to miss multiple weeks, they probably would have put him on injured reserve so they can get an extra roster spot. So if he doesn't play against the Giants, or if he's not even active, he may be active and not play, then something's up. But again, if I'm calling the shots, I'm just taking the L here for the win tomorrow, meaning I don't have to be on the books for any money for this guy going forward. I've got Travis Fulgham. If Fulgham gets hurt, I know people will say, well, what if Fulgham gets hurt? Then you would want Jeffrey to at least get in there and play as much X as possible. No, you can still play Jalen Reagor at the X. You have Greg Ward for the slot. You have Hightower who can play the Z. Or Zach Ertz comes back in a week or two, right? And you can go back to playing 12 personnel where you only have 2 wide receivers out on the field, and that could be Reagor, Hightower, Ward, Arcega-Whiteside. I know it's not a popular name. The bottom line is I feel like that there's more risk than reward for keeping Alshon Jeffery on the team right now.
Unless the reward is being able to come up with more creative red zone plays, because what we have seen to this point and the fact that he's running out of red zone plays, maybe that's a spot you can use him at.
Yeah, well, man, the red zone has been a disaster in both ends, on offense and defense. We didn't even talk about Jim Schwartz. You're a Schwartz guy. We'll probably get to him a little later because I feel like these last 2 games playing Dallas and New York, the defense has kind of flown under the radar because the score's been low, but they played 2 pretty bad teams, and those linebackers all of a sudden looking stable. Let's see what happens when they have to face Seattle, Green Bay, New Orleans, Arizona, even Cleveland that can run the ball. I want to switch gears real quick. You brought up Ben Simmons, the Sixers. They unveiled their new black uniforms for this year. And I got to be honest, I was very, very underwhelmed. And it took me a while. I thought this was going to be a case, Brodes, where the more I looked at it, the more I'd come around. That's not exactly happened. I still don't think that they're great unis. But I'll say this. I think if they just took the boathouse row off of it, that kind of chalky chicken scratch boathouse row, and just kept it black with the red and blue trim, I think I would like it a lot more. As much as I like the concept of boathouse row on the uniform, I don't like the chicken scratch chalk outline of it. It doesn't do it for me.
So when I first saw it, I thought, okay, I didn't love it by any means. I'm definitely not a lover. I'm not a hater either, though. It's like, I like the fact that it's not a Liberty Bell, a cheesesteak, a City Hall. Like, I like the fact that it's something unique and different. And I know some people are questioning, well, why is that good for out-of-market people? I feel these city jerseys is about the city, not so much the out-of-market people and those type of consumers. But you got to think, there's plenty of people, with that being said, out in Australia who love Ben Simmons. Like, there's Ben Simmons fans who will buy this jersey because, hey, Ben Simmons helped make this. So there is a part of that as well. I like the fact that it is different and it is unique. I don't know if many people know what it is outside of this area. but the execution could have been better. Philadelphia written underneath the Boathouse Row is weird to me. The number big up top, it feels clustered. It didn't need to be that way, I feel.
And of course, like every argument, right, it becomes polarizing. If you don't like it, like you and I clearly are on the side where we don't love it, right? People say, why do you got to be such a hater? Why can't you just like it? No, like I'm not losing. I'm not like, if I were a season ticket holder, I'm not like ripping them up and saying, I can't believe this franchise. I never want another thing to do with the Sixers again. No, I just don't like them. It's not like when they play in those uniforms, I'm going to be like, I can't watch tonight, man. I just cannot look at these hideous uniforms. I can't believe it. No, I just don't love them. And you know what? It's not uncommon. A lot of teams have these specialized uniforms now in every sport, and some look good and some don't.
Did you want to go down the road of Allen Iverson black jerseys?
No. See, and look, I know that some of this is heresy, all right, in this city, but I think that those are some of that era was some of the worst uniform that the Sixers have ever had. When I think of
the
Sixers,
blue ones, though. The blue ones, Kyle Korver. That's all I could picture. That was me back in the driveway when I was like 6. I was Kyle Korver in the corner with the blue Sixers, Jay.
Right, because it resonates kind of with your childhood and also with the great days of Allen Iverson. But I never really liked the logo emblazoned across the chest. I've always thought of the Sixers more, and maybe because I'm older, I just like the traditional red or blue, back from the Doc days or the Barkley days. I just was not into that style of uniform, not just the color, but also the design. It didn't do it. It didn't remind me of like Sixers tradition with those, like the gold and the black, right? That to me is not the Sixers. I love the Sixers uniforms now. They're red and they're blue ones and the white ones. They're the cream color. I love it all. But I can't get behind. I think I like the Boathouse Row ones actually more than the Iverson era ones. If that's heresy,
wow,
so be it. But I just never liked the Iverson era jersey. Ever.
Well, isn't the big part of Boathouse Row when it's dark out and the lights are on? This is almost the opposite. It feels it's black with just white scratch. Boathouse Row, when you drive by it at night, you see the lights. It's so cool. But you couldn't. How would you do that? Because then you would have red, yellow, green, like all these wonky colors and it flashing on your jersey. That wouldn't make sense. But that's the beauty of it. That's what it's all about, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, look, again, I like the concept. I don't like the execution. I like how they did sneak a little TTP in there, though.
Yeah, maybe they should just do like the Schuylkill River. People are like, what the hell is this? What does this look like? Just dirt.
That's a real beautiful thing you want to put on a jersey in the Schuylkill River.
Black water just flowing down.
Dead body. That would be great.
Yeah, that is fun. But look.
All right.
Go ahead.
Go ahead.
No,
go ahead.
Okay. It was a couple different directions I can go. I got a couple key points from some of the Eagles conversation we had, but I also have a Sixers point. So you tell me which direction you want me to go in.
Well, we just did Sixers, so let's go with your Sixers point.
Okay. Daryl Morey. All right, this is a big acquisition. You have Doc Rivers. You have this whole entire coaching staff now. What are your overall thoughts on where this team is headed? Because I am stunned that Joshua Harris went this direction. You're seeing numbers that's like $10 million a year. No wonder why he didn't go retire afterwards like he wanted to do. He wanted to take time off. No wonder why he didn't. Why you hear John Middleton, that fraud that he is, saying that people don't want to go up and uproot in a pandemic. Oh, if you spend the money, they will. This whole entire new regime you're going with the Sixers, I'm sure you feel good about it, but how good?
Yeah, you're right. Morey had 10 million reasons to want to uproot during a pandemic, amazingly. All right, so you know that internet meme of the lady who can't really figure out her emotions. So you see her like thinking about it, then not into it, then into it, then nah.
Yeah,
well, that was like
I think she takes like a drink of kombucha is how it came about. I could be wrong, but she took the kombucha. She's like, yeah, and then she enjoys it. And she's like, oh, not too bad.
Right. That was my reaction when they announced that Morey was joining the organization. And it's not, the mixed reaction wasn't because I'm mixed on Morey. It was more like, are the Sixers really going to like step back their ownership? I mean, Harris Blitzer, are they going to step back and let this guy run the show? That's a great thing if they do. No, I can't see it happening. They have no track record yet of not interfering. Is Morey going to keep these guys around or is he going to give it a shot? Does he really hate big men? No, he doesn't hate big men. He had Clint Capella. Like that was me. I was just this like kind of a boiling over cauldron of emotions. At the end of the day, I don't think you spend $10 million on Daryl Morey if you're the Sixers owners to sit there and tell him what to do. So I was also wondering, by the way, in my meme-like expressions of how it was going to work with Elton Brand, but clearly he's on board. I think that this is the best nucleus of executives and coaches to at least try to answer that question this year. And I have to think that Daryl is going to do his best to unload some of these bigger contracts that are not Ben and Joel and try to bring in some shooters. So I'm on board with everything so far. I don't know that it's necessarily going to get the Sixers to where we all want them to be, but I think it puts them in good hands to do so. And I'm very excited to see the moves that Morey and Brand are going to make, because I have to believe, Brodes, that they know they've got to reconstruct this team to put some shooters around. The question no longer for me is Ben Simmons going to be a shooter? Maybe some people think that Doc is going to make Ben into a shooter. I can't operate under that thought process. I will when it happens. I'm not going to talk about is anyone going to get through to Ben until it's actually happening. But I do think you can mitigate it just by putting more shooters around these guys.
Yes, they need more shooting. I just question a little bit. Heading into last season, we saw the starting five. We're like, wow, Josh Richardson, Al Horford. Like, we questioned Al Horford fitting with Embiid, but we totally convinced ourselves that this was it. I mean, this is a finals-type team, and they fell flat on their face. Now, to be fair, this happens every year. There's always a team that goes in with a ton of expectations. Boston Celtics with Kyrie. I mean, you name it. And it just doesn't work out because maybe the pressure and you just assume you're going to dominate. The Clippers last year, same exact scenario. So it happens. But are we doing the same with this regime right now? Like, wow, how can you get better than this? This is amazing. And then a year in or a year and a half in, 2 years in, you're like, hold on a second. This isn't what we kind of thought it would be. That might happen with hindsight, but heading into this, before we have that information in front of us, you got to be intrigued by this. I do feel that this is a different scenario than the roster construction one I pointed out, but it is in the back of my mind because we do tend to convince ourselves that things are greater than what they are. You look at Daryl Morey and what he did with Houston. So it's interesting. Mike Gill and I got into a pretty big debate on 97.3 about this. He made it to the Western Conference Finals 2 times in 13 seasons. If he was here in Philadelphia and did that exact thing 2 times, so that's a lot of second-round exits, could be a first-round exit. Is that good enough?
Man, that's a tough – obviously not, because everybody wants a championship, right? And I don't even try to look at it that way, Hunter. There's no certainties. You know, the Boston Celtics are still going to be very good. They have a really nice young nucleus. Toronto, you know, Miami
Brooklyn
has
at this
always
point,
been
too,
competitive.
with Kevin Durant.
Yeah, I'm a little skeptical, but, you know, obviously they've got some weaponry there. So there's no givens. There's no certainties except for this. And you couldn't say this in the past about the Sixers, right? They have a very accomplished tandem of executive and head coach. They have a head coach who's won a championship and has been to more than one NBA Finals, and he was also as a player, right? And they have an executive, as you just mentioned, who while has not won a championship, has been to the finals, Western Conference Finals twice, and is considered one of the best executives in the league. And I think it's important to note that the teams that he has succeeded with have all had a little bit of a different look, right? He's not afraid to be aggressive. He's not afraid to change things over. So you can't like Mike D'Antoni this guy and say he can only win one way. You know, I mean, he's a smart guy for a reason. So that's the only certainty, is that the Sixers appear to be in very good hands with their decision makers. At the end of the day, it comes down to Ben and Joel and their development. The people around them are responsible for developing them, and they have a very good track record of being able to procure and develop talent. If it doesn't manifest in championships, that'll be a talking point for why. I can't predict 3 or 4 years from now. Maybe they just kept running in, as Morey did in the Western Conference, to a team that's just better than them. Hard to imagine when you have Ben and Joel, but maybe Ben never really reaches the level a lot of people think he's going to be. I don't know. I do feel very confident that the makeup of the team will make sense. You are not going to have a year like last year where you're like, man, these pieces, like what's going on here, right? I think everybody will be on the same page. Maybe I'm wishfully thinking, but I'm going on the track record here. That's the only certainty. Whether or not they win, who knows? We don't know the next superstar that's going to leave one team and go to the Celtics or go to the Heat. I don't even know what the landscape is going to look like until after the draft and after free agency. it just may be that there's always a better team. We'll have to see.
Yeah, the thing that's big with Daryl Morey, too, is like you mentioned that you can do a different couple ways. You know, he mentioned in his press conference that it's not all about what he did in Houston. They went with what happened in Houston because that was what fit their roster the best. Here, it's a totally different scenario. You're not going to see a Robert Covington-type sized player playing the center position when you have Joel Embiid. So they tried that out in Houston. It didn't work, but that's what fit their roster the best. Totally different scenario here, and it's not like there's a scheme for Daryl Morey. Daryl Morey and the coaching staff schemes for what they have, and that's why I'm interested to see. Like, that stood out to me big time when he was speaking because everyone did question, what do you do with the big man when Daryl Morey's in play? Analytics is big with Daryl Morey. How will that be implemented? Because we just heard that with Brett Brown and that staff, there was too much analytics. They had to go get more basketball people. They did do that, but they also got more analytical people as well. So it will be interesting. I want to get your thoughts on this, though. Doc Rivers, the 3-1 series leads multiple times. I think it's funny because I'm not a Brett Brown hater. I think it was clearly time for him to go when he had flaws, but the outrage towards him was atrocious. It was like I felt the outrage was so aggressive that made me be like, it is not as bad as what you're saying, so then I'm labeled a Brett Brown lover, which is not the case. It was time. But if that happened, if Brett Brown had the same resume, which is different, there's no doubt Doc Rivers has more years, did win a championship, but that was almost like 12 years ago now, long time ago. 3-1 series leads multiple times. How much stock do you put into that? Because if that was Brett Brown's resume, I mean, come on, you know how it would be here if Brett Brown threw a couple series leads away like that.
Oh, absolutely. I definitely think it's a blemish on an otherwise really good coaching career, and it will come up, right, if he blows a lead in the playoffs as coach of the Sixers. But, you know, the question really isn't, you know, should you have made the move? He was the best coach available, and he has a championship pedigree, and he's a smart guy, and he holds players accountable, but he also can be a player's coach. I mean, if you're asking me if, you know, why didn't they go out and get Eric Spoelstra? Well, because Eric Spoelstra wasn't available,
that's not
right?
what I'm saying. I just feel that
no, I mean, I
isn't discussed ever. It's just they're so happy to get him. He's got a respected voice. These two stars need an NBA leader like Doc Rivers. I am not trying to make this as if it was a bad signing. I love the signing. I think it's funny how people think sometimes when it comes to the two, because if that same resume wasn't Doc Rivers and it was someone else, I just feel it would be viewed differently.
Yeah, it probably would be. I guess it depends on who that someone else is. If they, like, you know, hired Jeff Van Gundy out of the TV booth, not Stan, Jeff, right? I think people would be like, oh, man, that's pretty cool. But they would always harp on the fact that he could never get over the hump and you know, of winning a finals. And that would be the blemish against him. But I still think people would look at that as an upgrade just because it's a newer voice. It's a guy who does have a certain level of success that Brett Brown himself had not attained before he came here, and had obviously as an assistant, but because he was not the head coach. And obviously as head coach of the Sixers, he was not able to get over his own hump of the second round. So I still think people would be like, all right, well, at least you got somebody who did more than Brett was able to do. But you're right. There's always going to be those blemishes that you have to wonder because, you know, the old Phil Jackson ain't walking through the door, or Eric Spoelstra ain't walking through the door.
You're not wrong there. I'm excited. Like, I'm feeling now in the November vibe that we have at the moment. No hockey. I know you're a big Flyersman. No Sixers. It's weird with just NFL going on. Yeah, you have like the Maction going on, but come on, I can't get into the Maction that much. Background noise, not so much edge of my seat. I'm watching sports tonight. I'm missing it. I'm missing basketball. So December 22nd seems to be the kickoff date, and we'll have some NBA draft and free agency stuff that'll at least push us forward soon.
All right, the big question. Did you enjoy your first Brodes and Mosh show?
I did. I absolutely did. Did you enjoy it?
I did. Do you think we should do it again?
I do. I do think so.
All right.
I want to end on this.
Uh-huh.
This is just a statement. You don't have to react too much. You could if you want, though. You know, for Brett Favre, it stood out to me as we were talking about it in the beginning. Never got to it. For him to say Foles over Wentz, when Wentz is Brett Favre, blows my mind. Is that not who Carson Wentz is? So he's pretty much saying he would rather have Nick Foles over himself. That's all I got to say.
I mean, this is the guy who never was really warm to Aaron Rodgers. And you know why he was never warm to Aaron Rodgers? Because he probably knew Aaron was going to be better than him. So, there's a little bias in everything that Brett Favre says. But that's a good way to end it. It's been a fun show. Hope everybody enjoyed it. We're going to do it again. Brodes and Mosh and Brodes. See you guys next week.